"Sir, that boy has been sleeping by the hospital gate for weeks now," the guard whispered. The billionaire glanced from his car window. What he did next shocked everyone. It was 11:30 p.m. at St. Grace Memorial Hospital in Lagos. The street was quiet, save for the flicker of a dying street lamp and the whir of a standby generator in the distance. On the concrete pavement near the hospital's front fence, a boy lay curled up on 2 sheets of flattened cardboard. His face was turned toward the wall. No blanket, no pillow. Just a thin nylon bag under his head and a wrapper clutched tightly over his tiny body. From inside a black Maybach, Edward Cole, a billionaire investor in real estate and healthcare, sat watching. He was returning from a private boardroom visit. But now, he couldn't take his eyes off the child sleeping on cold pavement. The hospital gatekeeper stepped closer. "Sir, he comes every night. Quiet boy. Never begs. Just lies there." "Where's his family?" Edward asked. "No one knows. Nurses give him bread sometimes. But he doesn't say much." Edward rolled down his tinted window. The breeze brought in a faint smell of fuel and roasted plantain. "Hey!" Edward called gently. The boy stirred, then sat up. He looked about 8. Thin arms, dusty knees. He wore a faded t-shirt with one torn sleeve and old slippers that looked borrowed. His eyes were bright but tired, alert but guarded. "What's your name?" Edward asked. "Daniel," he said, barely above a whisper. "You sleep here every night?" Daniel nodded. "Why this place?" "This was the last place I saw Auntie Carol." Edward raised a brow. "Who is she?" "She took care of me. She used to work here. She died last month." Edward felt something shift inside him. "Where are your parents?" Daniel looked away. I don't know." A long pause passed. Then Daniel added, "Auntie Carol told me my mum was here once. She gave birth to me. But then something happened." "What happened?" Daniel looked down at his feet. "I'm not sure. Carol said she would tell me when I was older." Edward stared at the boy. A child sleeping outside a hospital. No parents. No home. No answers. The boy clutched his bag tighter. "Please don't take me anywhere. Auntie Carol said not everyone who offers help really means it." Edward sat back slowly. In that moment he realized. This child wasn't just homeless. He was part of a story. A secret someone had tried very hard to bury. By morning, the sun was already sharp over the rooftops of Lagos, but Daniel was still asleep on the cardboard pavement. His tiny frame remained tucked in, one hand gripping his school bag like it held all the safety in the world. Edward Cole sat in the back seat of his Maybach across the street, watching. He'd been there for 30 minutes. This wasn't just another act of pity or a headline opportunity. Something about the boy pulled at him, something deeper than logic. It felt like he was looking at a version of himself that had never been loved. The driver cleared his throat. "Sir, are we heading to the office?" Edward shook his head. "Open the door." He stepped out, walked across the road, and crouched in front of Daniel. The boy opened his eyes quickly, alert and defensive. "It's okay," Edward said gently. "I just want to talk." Daniel sat up. "You came back." "Yes. I couldn't stop thinking about you." The boy clutched his bag tighter. "I told you. Auntie Carol said not everyone who offers help really means it." Edward smiled sadly. "She sounds like a very smart woman." Daniel didn't respond. Edward hesitated, then said, "Would you let me take you somewhere safe? Just for today. Place with food. Clean bed. You don't have to stay if you don't want." The boy frowned. "Why?" "I don't know yet," Edward admitted. "But something tells me you shouldn't be out here alone." Daniel looked at the hospital gate, then at the Maybach, then back at Edward. "Will I have to talk to anyone?" "No. Just rest." Long pause. Then Daniel slowly got up and followed him. The driver opened the back door. Daniel climbed in carefully, his eyes scanning the leather seats and glossy interior. He sank into the corner, gripping his bag like a shield. Edward sat beside him. You hungry? Daniel nodded once. All right. Let's get you something first. The ride through the city was quiet. Daniel said nothing. He just stared out the tinted windows, his reflection hovering over yellow buses, hawkers, and streets buzzing with life he wasn't part of. At the estate gate, the guards saluted sharply. Edward's mansion stood 3 stories tall, modern glass with gentle beige walls and tall trees lining the driveway. Inside, a steward greeted them. Sir, get the boy food and clean clothes. Prepare the guest suite on the 2nd floor. The steward nodded and hurried off. Daniel stood awkwardly in the marble hallway, unsure what to touch or say. Edward placed a hand gently on his shoulder. You're safe here, Daniel. And as the boy looked around, lost, amazed, overwhelmed, one question echoed inside Edward's mind. Who are you really? The guest room was brighter than anything Daniel had ever known. Cream-colored walls, a soft bed with a real mattress, a bathroom with running water. He'd walked in with hesitation, but the moment he sank into the sheets, his eyes fluttered shut. He didn't even notice when he fell asleep. Meanwhile, Edward Cole stood at the doorway, watching him. There was something about the way the boy moved, quiet, aware, deliberate, that stirred something in Edward. Not just pity, not charity, but a sense of responsibility. A strange, almost painful curiosity. He walked to his study and made a call. Dr. Felicia. It's Edward. I need a child psychologist at my residence. Loki. Discreet. It's urgent. The doctor agreed to come the next day. Later that afternoon, Daniel woke up to the smell of fried plantain and jollof rice. The steward had placed a tray beside the bed. The boy sat up, confused, his fingers brushing the clean sheets as if checking whether this was real. Downstairs, Edward was reviewing some investment documents but couldn't focus. He heard soft footsteps and looked up. Daniel stood at the edge of the hallway, freshly bathed, wearing a clean t-shirt and shorts the staff had found in storage. He held his bag, still tight in his grip. I don't know if I should eat without asking, he mumbled. Edward stood. You don't have to ask here. Daniel nodded and sat at the edge of the couch. His eyes wandered to the bookshelf. You like to read? Edward asked. Daniel nodded again. Auntie Carol used to read to me when she wasn't working late. Edward smiled faintly. What kind of stories? Daniel hesitated. Ones about brave people. People who lost everything but didn't give up. Edward's smile faded slightly. I guess I like those too, he said. They sat in silence for a few moments before Daniel asked, Why did you bring me here? Edward paused. Because I saw something in you. Something strong. Something familiar. Daniel lowered his gaze. She said my mother was strong too. Edward leaned forward. Did Carol ever tell you what happened to her? Daniel hesitated. Only that something bad happened. That someone made it look like she did something wrong. But she didn't. He clutched the bag tighter. Carol said she wasn't ready to tell me more yet. Edward watched the boy carefully. You miss her. She was the only person who never lied to me. The room fell quiet again. Edward felt a knot form in his chest. There was more to this boy. More behind his silence. His eyes were like storm clouds holding back the weight of years. Edward didn't know it yet, but Daniel's truth was going to cost someone dearly. Maybe even him. It was just past midnight. The mansion was silent. The hum of the air conditioner filled the guest room where Daniel lay curled up under soft blankets. But his eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet, too clean, too safe. It didn't feel real. Beside him on the bed was the only thing that had been with him since the day Auntie Carol died. A small, worn-out nylon bag, knotted tightly at the top. Even in his sleep, he kept a hand on it. He sat up slowly, untying the knot with careful fingers. His eyes shifted toward the door, then back to the contents. Inside were just 3 items. 1. A folded baby photo. A newborn baby swaddled in white, with a woman's arm gently wrapped around it. Her face was cropped out. 2. A blue plastic hospital bracelet with the name, Daniel Cole. Mail. February 11, 2015. 3. And a sealed envelope with faded ink that read, "If anything happens to me, give this to Daniel when he turns 10. Carol." Daniel was 9. But something inside him whispered, "Open it now." He stared at the envelope a long time. His fingers hovered over the flap. Then the door creaked slightly. Daniel gasped, quickly stuffing the items back in the bag and tying it shut. But it was only Edward, standing in the hallway in his robe, holding a glass of water. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said gently. Daniel clutched the bag to his chest. "It's fine." Edward stepped in slowly. "Couldn't sleep." Daniel shook his head. "I understand," Edward said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Sometimes even soft beds can't quiet the noise inside." Daniel looked at him. "Did Carol ever give you anything?" Edward asked, eyes drifting toward the bag. The boy stiffened. "Just some old clothes. Books." Edward didn't press. "That's okay. You don't have to tell me anything until you're ready." Daniel's fingers relaxed a little. Edward stood. "Sleep well, Daniel." But as he turned to leave, something strange happened. Daniel called out softly, "Your last name is Cole, right?" Edward stopped. "Yes." "Why?" Daniel shrugged. "Nothing. It just sounds familiar." Edward's brow furrowed slightly. But he said nothing, gave a faint smile and left. Back in his room, the billionaire sat on the edge of his bed, heart oddly unsettled. He couldn't shake the feeling, like the boy carried a missing piece of a puzzle he didn't even know he'd been solving. Down the hall, Daniel sat wide awake, staring at the envelope. Tomorrow he would open it. And everything would start to unravel. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains of the guest room. Birds chirped faintly in the background, but inside it was silent. Daniel sat cross-legged on the bed, the nylon bag open in front of him. His fingers trembled slightly as he peeled open the old sealed envelope Carol had written years ago. The paper inside was aged and creased, but her handwriting remained bold. "Dear Daniel, if you are reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I prayed I'd be around long enough to tell you this face to face, but life doesn't always give us what we hope for. I loved you like my own. But you need to know. Your mother was not a criminal. She was framed. Her name was Angela Cole. Yes, Cole. That's not a coincidence. She was born into wealth. Her parents owned Cole Pharmaceuticals. She was their only child. But the family, the uncles and aunts, they were greedy. They knew she'd inherit everything. And when she got pregnant during her final year in university, they pounced." Daniel blinked. "They planted drugs in her apartment while she was in the hospital giving birth, then tipped off the police anonymously. She was arrested 3 days after she brought you home. I was there, Daniel. I saw it happen. I was her friend. Cleaner at the hospital. I grabbed you and hid. That day, as the officers took her away, she looked at me and said one thing. Protect my son. And never let the Cole name be his curse. Daniel's breath hitched. He looked again at the hospital bracelet. Daniel Cole. His full name. He had the name all along and didn't even realize the weight it carried. Footsteps approached the hallway. Quickly, Daniel folded the letter and slid it under the mattress. He didn't want to share it yet. Not until he understood it fully. The door opened. Edward Cole walked in. "Morning," he said. Daniel tried to smile, but his mind was racing. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," Daniel lied. Edward sat at the foot of the bed. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel nodded. "Do you know your full name?" The boy paused, then said slowly, "Daniel Cole." Edward stared at him. A quiet moment passed between them. "You ever wonder why you carry that name?" Edward asked carefully. Daniel looked down at his bag. "I think I'm starting to." Edward's jaw tightened slightly, but he smiled to hide it. "Come," he said gently. "Let's get breakfast." As they left the room together, both unaware that the truth was crawling toward them, one painful piece at a time. The house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioner and the gentle rise and fall of Daniel's chest as he slept. He had dozed off on the couch in the living room, his small arms curled under his head, a half-eaten plate of rice still on the table. Edward stood in the hallway, eyes fixed on the boy. He hadn't moved for nearly 10 minutes. Something wasn't sitting right. Daniel Cole. That name, his name, felt too familiar, too intentional. Edward's gut stirred. He walked closer, his eyes drifting to the boy's worn-out backpack resting against the wall. He paused, then slowly crouched. "I'm just trying to understand him better," he whispered, almost like asking permission from the sleeping boy. He unzipped the bag gently. Inside were a few crumpled clothes, a biscuit wrapped in nylon, and a brown envelope. It looked worn, its flaps slightly torn and creased. Someone had already opened it. A letter peeked from within. Edward's hand trembled as he slid it out. The handwriting was shaky, emotional, each word bleeding through like it was written with urgency and fear. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here to protect him. His name is Daniel. His mother, Angela, was framed. The people who took everything from her were her own family. Her name was Angela Cole. Keep him safe. One day, he'll need to know the truth." Edward's breath caught. Angela Cole. He stood up slowly, gripping the letter like it might burn. He walked to his study in a daze, mind racing through a buried chapter of his family's past. Angela Cole, the only daughter of his father's late brother. The same woman who vanished after an inheritance scandal. The name had been scrubbed from family conversations. But he remembered her. As a child, she had once rescued him from drowning at a family retreat. He had never forgotten the kindness in her voice. Now her son was in his house. A knock of memory, a tug of conscience, a flood of guilt. He dropped into his leather chair and picked up his private landline. "Williams," he said when the old family lawyer answered. "Sir, I need you to pull all the sealed records we have on Angela Cole. Health, legal, property, everything." There was silence. "That file was locked by your father himself. Are you sure you want?" "I don't care," Edward snapped. "Send it tonight." He hung up. He glanced at the letter again, then at the living room door. A boy was sleeping in his house, alone in the world, marked by betrayal. And suddenly Edward realized. He wasn't just a stranger taking in a lost child. He was standing in the middle of a family crime scene. And the truth was no longer buried. The rain started lightly that night, tapping gently against the windows of Edward's study as he sat by the fire, the envelope still in his hands. Across the room, a single lamp cast a warm glow over the mahogany table, where his laptop pinged. A secure file had just arrived. Subject: Confidential. Angela Cole Records. He opened it. The first page was a scanned court document, dated back to early 2016. Edward's eyes narrowed as he read the case title. In the matter of Angela Cole versus the estate of Paul and Miriam Cole, his uncle and aunt, Angela's parents. The attached files detailed a legal battle. Angela had inherited everything: properties, shares, and a Lagos Island estate. But 3 weeks after the official will was read, a police report surfaced. Angela was accused of drug possession. Anonymous tip. Cocaine found in her apartment. Arrested 3 days after giving birth. No trial. Just silence. Edward's fingers trembled as he opened the next file. A letter scanned from police custody. "My name is Angela Cole. I did not commit any crime. My uncles and aunts framed me for my inheritance. They wanted it all. My baby is innocent. Please find him. Protect him. His name is Daniel." That name again. And then another scanned item. A photo of the birth slip from a private hospital. It read, baby name, Daniel Cole, date of birth, November 2, 2016, mother, Angela Cole, sex, male status, healthy. Edward stood abruptly, heart pounding in his chest. It's all connected now. He grabbed his coat and rushed into the hallway where Daniel was still asleep, curled under a blanket on the couch. Gently, Edward knelt by the boy and touched his shoulder. Daniel, wake up, son. Just for a moment. Daniel blinked, groggy, his big eyes adjusting. Sir. Edward's voice cracked. Do you have a bracelet? From when you were born? Maybe from your bag. Daniel nodded slowly and fished it out. Edward took it, turned it over. Daniel Cole, male. February 11, 2016, Angela C. He closed his eyes, swallowed hard. Daniel was Angela's son. His family had betrayed their own blood, erased her, stolen everything. And now her son had found his way home through pain, hunger, and sheer fate. Edward hugged the boy tightly. For the first time, Daniel didn't pull away. I know who you are, Edward whispered. And I swear to you, Daniel, your mother's story won't end in silence. Outside, the rain grew heavier. Inside, a legacy was about to be rewritten. Scene ends. Edward confirms the truth. The next scene begins his plan to confront the family and reclaim Daniel's inheritance and justice for Angela. The next morning, Edward stood at the center of the Cole family estate boardroom. His presence commanding, sharp in a dark blue suit. The long table was filled with faces he hadn't seen in years. Cousins, uncles, and aunts who had profited off Angela's disappearance. No one had expected this summons. His cousin Gerald, the self-proclaimed heir to the family legacy, raised an eyebrow. What's this about, Edward? You've been off the grid for years. Edward placed a thick brown folder on the table. This, he said, voice controlled, is about the truth. About Angela Cole. The room shifted. Whispers. Frozen expressions. One aunt scoffed. That girl. We don't speak of her. You will now, Edward cut in. Because her son is alive. And I have him. Pin drop silence. He opened the folder and slid out printed evidence. Court documents, birth certificate, hospital bracelet photos, and Carol's letter. They erased her. Framed her. And when she cried out for help, you turned away. Worse, some of you profited from it. But it ends now. Gerald sneered. You expect us to just give up what we've built? Edward leaned forward. You didn't build it. Angela's parents left it for her. You stole it. And I'm here to return it to her son. The tension thickened. An older uncle tried to calm things down. Edward, let's be reasonable. You want reasonable. Edward snapped. Then meet me in court. I've already filed a civil case. If this family won't restore Angela's legacy willingly, the law will force it. He stood tall, gaze scanning the room. You have 72 hours to respond. After that, I go public. Then he walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence. That night, back at home, Daniel looked up from a storybook. Sir, why did you take me in? Edward smiled gently. Because someone brave once asked me to protect you. And now it's my turn to fight for you. Daniel grinned. Are you my family? Edward nodded. The only one you'll ever need. Edward couldn't sleep. The soft hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic ticking of the clock in his study did nothing to calm his racing thoughts. Daniel was asleep upstairs, tucked beneath the warmth of a comforter. But the truth about his past was far from finished. Pearl, the woman who raised him, who loved him like a mother. How did she die? He pulled open his drawer, bringing out the old hospital ID Carol used. It was faded, but the barcode and employee number were still intact. He opened his laptop, logged into a private investigator's database, and typed, Carol Spencer, Cleaner, Harmony Medical Center, 2016 to 2024. Seconds later, the screen populated with files. Personnel records, work history, incident logs. He opened the last one. An internal report dated 6 months ago. Staff member Carol Spencer was found unconscious behind the hospital waste unit. No witnesses. Died en route to emergency. Autopsy report. Blunt force trauma. Ruled accidental fall. Edward's stomach turned. The report was thin. Too neat. He picked up his phone and dialed a contact. Lydia Ocone, a forensic journalist known for exposing medical corruption in Lagos. Lydia. I need a favor, Edward said. It's about a cleaner who worked at Harmony Medical, Carol Spencer. She died under mysterious circumstances. There was silence for a moment. Then Lydia's voice came sharp and curious. Carol. I remember that name. I looked into her case. She'd been trying to file a report before she died. What kind of report? She was investigating something involving a woman wrongfully imprisoned. Angela Cole. Edward sat forward. That's Daniel's mother. Then you need to hear what I found, Lydia said. She approached me 6 months ago. Said she had proof Angela's arrest was planned. That drugs were planted. She even hinted that powerful family members were behind it. We scheduled a meeting, but she never showed. Edward's heart dropped. You think she was silenced? I think she was too close to something dangerous. And someone wanted her quiet. Lydia sent Edward a scanned photo. It was a handwritten note. Carol's last message to Lydia before she vanished. They know I have evidence. Angela's apartment didn't have drugs. I cleaned it the day before she gave birth. Her family is powerful and they're watching. If anything happens to me, protect the boy. He is her son. The truth must come out. Tears welled in Edward's eyes. Carol had risked everything to protect Daniel. And now he finally knew she was murdered. He stared out the window, the Lagos skyline blinking in the distance. I promise, Carol, he whispered. I won't let them bury you like they buried her. The next day, Edward visited the police headquarters with a lawyer. He presented the hospital autopsy, Lydia's investigative files, and Carol's note. Are you accusing someone of murder? The officer asked, stunned. Yes, and cover-up, and inheritance theft, and unlawful imprisonment. He pointed to the sealed envelope with the family crest. It's time the Cole family answered for their crimes. Back at home, Daniel played with his puzzle pieces, humming softly. Edward sat beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. There's something I want to tell you, he said gently. Daniel looked up. Carol. The woman who raised you, she didn't just love you. She protected you. She gave her life so you could live in truth. Daniel's eyes welled up. They hurt her. Edward nodded. But we're going to make sure her story, and your mother's, is heard. Daniel crawled into Edward's arms and whispered. Will she be proud of me? Edward held him close. More than you'll ever know. The storm was coming. But this time they were ready. The Lagos State High Court was packed. Cameras clicked. Journalists whispered. The Cole family sat on one side of the courtroom. Gerald, uncles, and aunts in crisp suits and forced composure. On the other side sat Edward in a charcoal black suit, one hand gripping a worn photo of Angela and baby Daniel. Beside him sat his lawyer and Lydia Ocone, ready to testify. Daniel watched from the front row, hands resting on his small knees. He didn't fully understand everything happening, but he knew this mattered. Carol's photo rested in his chest pocket. The bailiff announced, "All rise." The judge entered, an elderly woman with glasses and a powerful gaze. Today's hearing involves the estate of Paul and Miriam Cole, the legality of the imprisonment of Angela Cole, and the wrongful death of Ms. Carol Spencer. She turned to Edward's table. "Counsel, proceed." Edward's lawyer stood. "My lord, we are here to correct a decade-old injustice. Angela Cole, sole heir to her parents' estate, was framed and imprisoned so her family could seize her inheritance. Her child, Daniel, was hidden and raised by a cleaner named Carol Spencer, who later died under suspicious circumstances while attempting to expose the truth. He handed over the sealed file. This file contains the birth certificate, arrest records, an anonymous police tip traced to one of the family's numbers, and the original inheritance deed. Gasps echoed in the court. Edward rose. "My lord, I am not just here as an observer. I took in the boy, Daniel Cole, and investigated the story myself. What I found was heart-wrenching. A woman betrayed by her own blood. Cleaner silenced. A child forced to sleep outside a hospital. And also a greedy family could build an empire off stolen wealth." He held up the bracelet. "This belonged to Daniel. His mother entrusted him to Carol. Carol gave her life trying to protect him." Gerald's lawyer interrupted. "Objection, Your Honor. These claims are dramatic at best and defamatory at worst." The judge raised her hand. "Let him finish." Edward turned directly to Gerald. "You killed your own cousin with lies. And when her cleaner friend got too close, she was found dead in the alley. All the money you earned. It's blood-stained." Lydia approached the stand next. She submitted Carol's handwritten note and her correspondence before the murder. This woman wasn't insane or paranoid. She knew what she was doing. She left breadcrumbs. And we picked them up. The defense fumbled. They tried denying the phone records. But the judge overruled. They tried to explain Carol's death. But the autopsy contradiction broke them. 2 days later, the final verdict came. This court finds sufficient evidence of conspiracy, inheritance fraud, and criminal suppression of truth, the judge declared. All holdings under the Cole estate are to be frozen and reassessed. A trust shall be formed in the name of Daniel Cole. The individuals involved in framing Angela Cole will be prosecuted accordingly. Court adjourned. Edward placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "It's done." Daniel blinked up at him. "So, we won." Edward knelt and smiled. "You didn't just win, son. You made history." 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a crowd at Harmony Medical's new pediatric wing. A plaque read, "The Carol Spencer Children's Center, in honor of love, truth, and bravery." He wore a small suit. He looked up at Edward and whispered, "She would have loved this, right?" Edward nodded. "She already does." In the crowd, Angela Cole sat, finally freed and cleared of all charges, her eyes full of tears, her hands trembling as she reached for her son. Daniel walked to her slowly, then ran. "Mom!" They embraced. Everyone clapped. The cameras flashed. The truth had come full circle. From betrayal to redemption. From injustice to legacy. Because one man chose to listen. One boy chose to hope.